Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of Triggered and True. Hi, Laura. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good. You know, we were talking a little bit beforehand, but I rushed right into business and didn't talk about like the small talk of like,
Yeah.
how are you? Like,
How are
you
you?
okay? Is everything going well for you? Yeah. So
I'm doing well.
I'm kind of all business sometimes.
Yeah. It's focused.
I'm focused. Well, we're going to speak about focus today.
Yeah.
So the title of today's episode is A Roadmap to True Freedom, Science, Stillness, and the Compassion Method. And
Sounds
a little bit
already.
And a little bit of Bible in there too, of course.
Yeah,
okay.
throw it all in there because that's a part of it. That's part of the roadmap to real freedom.
To true freedom, a roadmap to true freedom, science, stillness, and the compassion method. So the genesis of today's podcast came from another podcast that I listened to. For those familiar, maybe you've ever heard of it. It's called the Huberman podcast. And this was, we'll put it in the show notes, but this was from an episode they did March 11th, 2024, if anybody wants to go pick it up. So I'm just going to give kind of a little summary of that, and then we're going to tie this into why it's so important and has so much bearing to the compassion method. And that's where Laura's going to come in to drive home.
That's where I shine.
That's where she's going to shine, right? So in this episode, they talked a lot about how important it is for the brain to have downtime. And just like with the compassion method, when Laura was first explaining the brain science, it kind of drew me in. And when she was explaining the brain science behind a trigger, and you know, when you were doing all those things, it really pulled me in to be like, you know, maybe there is something to this, because my logical brain was firing, you know, my more developed side of my brain. And it helped me just kind of make sense of it. So this episode that these guys were talking about, heavy science, this is heavy, extreme logic, extreme left brain, and we're going to pull in the right brain, okay, after I go through a little bit more of the summary. But they talked about how important it was for the brain to have downtime for memory consolidation and learning. And if we don't give our brains a break, we really stifle our brain's ability to learn and to have memory. And they talked about this, the science behind it is, Huberman explains that brief periods of idle time or gaps, calls it gap time, between focus efforts allow the hippocampus, which is a key part of our brain that's involved in memory, to replay recent experiences at an accelerated rate. So he says this is similar to what happens during deep sleep. And in deep sleep, the brain consolidates learning by strengthening neural connections. And these gap effects, speed up learning, neuroplasticity. And his guest that he had on the show was a gentleman by the name of Newport, who wrote a book called Deep Work. And he talks a lot about the importance of boredom and getting comfortable with boredom, and how we live in a time where human beings are so hyper stimulated because of the technology. Yeah. Well, it really kind of started with the advent of the light bulb, if you really want to go back.
I was going to say, there wasn't actually the internet around when I was a kid, and I was definitely bored and struggled with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there you go. But the point of it is that we live in a very hyper-stimulated time where we have so much access to technology, entertainment, all these things, that it's hard to give our brain the space, and so a lot of what Cal Newport's book is about, and he talks about how he trained himself to be just more comfortable with boredom. And I was thinking as I was listening to this, you know, even when I'm at a doctor's office in a waiting room, like I feel like you got your phone with you, you're like, I'll just look on my phone, like just sitting and staring out the window, or even just flipping through a magazine or something. It just isn't done. Like it feels like, it almost feels awkward to even be on an elevator.
Yeah.
To not pull out your phone and look at it. It almost feels awkward just to stand there. You know, so this is definitely a society-wide thing. And then they just talked about why this constant stimulation is so harmful, because our brain wasn't meant to be on 24/7. It was meant to have these gap effects.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to have that. And obviously all of this hyperstimulation is affecting people's sleep as well.
Yeah, of
Having
course.
huge impacts. And this connected to some stuff that I had read in years past from kind of one of my, I read a lot. I like to read. So these people's books and stuff that I read, they become like my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know them.
Yeah.
They don't know me. I don't know them, but I look at them kind of as mentors. And one of those mentors is Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's business partner, who recently passed away. He just shy of his 100th birthday.
Wow.
He was still going strong, but he missed they were going to have a big 100th birthday celebration for Charlie, but he died a few months prior to them being able to do that. But he has a quote that I read in a book about him called The Tao of Charlie Munger by David Clark. It says, Charlie says, I think people who multitask pay a huge price. They believe that when they multitask, they are being super productive. But in reality, that if you don't have time to think about something deeply, you are giving your competitors, who might be thinking deeply, a great advantage over you. So the book goes on to say Charlie's ability to focus intensely and really think about something has been his competitive edge in beating Wall Street at its own game. Another author that I read a lot is Morgan Housel, and he's a economist, a behavioral economist. Mm-hmm. And he says, I read a blog of his recently, and he said how a lot of jobs in our world today are thought jobs. They're thinking jobs. And he said, but the bosses, of which I'm one of them, we don't really reward our people for the thinking. We reward them to be doing all the time.
Yeah, for the producer.
So he's like, just sitting at your desk and staring at a whiteboard for 2 hours, your boss is not going to think you're being very productive. But he's like, but that's where true ideas happen. That's where some of the best ideas come from. Yeah. And he said, like, how often do people go on vacation, come back and say, I got this great idea, because they finally took the downtime.
Rest.
The brain science was, we let the brain rest, we let it consolidate thought, memories, thinking, and we did that. And this is so true. Like, I think of my time, some of my best ideas happen sitting on a beach, reading a book, staring at the water, or going for a walk. Mm-hmm. And going for walks is so important. So here's where we're going with all this, and here's where you're going to come in and shine. All right. So when I was listening to that Huberman podcast, it was the Newport, Dr. Newport, who shared that, he developed all this discipline around this. Like, he doesn't use social media at all. Yeah. He has a phone. I can't remember if it was a smartphone or if it was just one of the throwbacks. I think it is a smartphone yet, but he doesn't do social media. Explain how he's all this discipline about email and all this other stuff. Yeah. But then they went on to share that he still struggles with insomnia. And I was thinking to myself, discipline alone will get you so far. Mm-hmm. But there's a very good chance insomnia could be connected to matters of the heart. Yep. And so kind of the point of this is that the science kind of got me in the door, like with your material. Mm-hmm. Yep. But it's not what brought the healing. Mm-mm. No. It brought some awareness, and it really kind of opened me up, because it was a bit of an icebreaker for me, because I kind of thought what you did was weird.
And maybe trust it more. Yeah, exactly.
I thought what you did was, Laura, I thought you were weird.
That's okay.
No, I didn't think you were weird. Not at all. I didn't think you're probably the most normal person I know, to be honest. But anyway, the rest of us got issues. But I didn't think you were so much weird, just maybe some of the stuff you were talking about, because it was so foreign.
Well, it also, too, the irony of it is, just a little brief snippet, is a lot of the things that I teach today, I used to think was weird, too, because I didn't understand the brain science behind it. I just thought people were just coming up with these ideas about how we're supposed to connect with our child self, for example. Yep. And it sounded very weird to me, and sounded very I didn't understand it at all. In fact, when I'd hear people talk about it, I would actually be resistant towards it because I didn't understand the science behind it. So I just thought it was just this like weird idea of connecting to your child self.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you thought it was weird too. So,
I did. I totally did. I did not get it at all until the science. And the science is helpful. Yep. But like you said, understanding without application is not healing.
Yes. Yes. Right. Right. And I kind of recognized in that podcast, they were able to really explain the science really well.
Yes, which is amazing.
At a level where we probably, the average bear does not need to go that far.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of lost me but I recognize that even though like the one gentleman was able to bring a tremendous amount of discipline, which I can relate to because I can be very, very disciplined.
Yeah.
But like that discipline alone just doesn't bring the freedom.
No, it doesn't. In fact, a lot of times discipline is suppression. So we are disciplined not to do something because of the negative characteristics of it, but that actually is suppressing why it's negative for us in the first place. Social media is such a great one. People are always taking breaks on it.
Yep.
But then usually coming back to it, or even the people that decide to give it up completely haven't dealt with why did social media bother you in the first place?
Well, and whatever social media, whatever painful part of your inner world it was helping you deal with, you're probably just replacing it with something else.
Exactly.
You know? But I remember what you told me. I don't know if you remember this, but you told me around social media, you said, don't focus on stopping doing it. Instead, when you find yourself going to your phone, Can you see my phone here? I can't see myself, so I can't tell. But yeah. All right. So whenever you find yourself going to your phone, instead of just slapping your hand and saying, "Bad Brian, what are you doing?" Get curious with it.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, well, what is this? What am I feeling right now?
Yeah. One of my students, because we have an alumni group and we were talking about I'm starting to put like questions on there to get people interacting more. And we had one question that we were talking about, and it was about our relationship with social media. And one of my students said she has started doing compassion scrolling, where she'll sit with herself in compassion, connected to her true self, and go through scrolling as a opportunity to connect with herself, to understand what's hurting, to understand what's helping. She would pay attention to what she's getting out of it and why does she go towards it? Because it's not just all bad. We're actually getting needs met from it too, but we're not aware of it because we're just in the scrolling with no pause, rest to actually pay attention to what we're doing. So like what we're talking about today is so huge in the sense of until we pause and rest and connect, we're not going to be able to actually recognize why we're turning to social media in the first place. We just slap our hands and say social media is bad, takes your time, causes a lot of triggers, a lot of distress, instead of saying, hey, what is it inside of me that is actually getting a need met from social media?
Yeah. 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 Instead of stopping to feel.
Use it as an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because he just removed it, but there were still the same factors within his internal world that were still happening regardless of the catalyst of social media.
Right. Right. Which reminds me of like something I've heard before, like forced abstinence is not freedom.
Exactly.
Like there's no freedom in that.
Exactly. And I often say like the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Mm-hmm. So if we have an addiction and we become sober, that doesn't mean we actually got the connection that's needed to be the opposite of addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as I've revisited what you shared with me all those years ago and thought through my relationship with social media or my phone, and for me, it's kind of even just really more my phone than it's social media. Because for me, I'll tell you what drives me more than anything is email. My email inbox is what drives me.
Wow.
Because it's like constantly something's coming in for me to do.
Yep.
To read, to address, some of it to reply to, some of it not. But like what I'm really doing is I'm medicating with doing. That's the
Yeah.
dopamine hits I'm getting is
Yeah.
I'm doing something.
Keeping that machine going, like the email machine, which
Machine's
is connected
going.
to your business, to you personally, whatever you have your email connected to, you're keeping that machine going so that you can have that feeling, that medication of performance and producing.
Yeah. And so when I recognize when I'm doing that, if I really am okay with, getting connected with what I'm feeling, I'm anxious, and really it's kind of there's a scared, there's a scaredness in there that I'm trying to assuage with it. And yes, I'm getting the dopamine hits, but ultimately it's not really very helpful. And I actually shared something with my wife last night. I'm in a very busy season of work. It's very, very exciting. We're going to have our largest growth year as a company since we started 27 years ago.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
I mean, it could still get derailed, but it looks like that's what's going to happen.
That's amazing.
And it's just, so it's exciting, but like in that excitement creates this energy that's very similar to anxiety.
Exactly.
So excitement and anxiety are kind of like, we know all these things travel the same tracks, right? But then you start thinking about, getting it all done and what can go wrong. But so I told her last night, I said, I feel kind of emotionally unstable, and she shared with me this morning something that she picked up from, I think, a student in one of her yoga classes. The student said, sometimes when you have those feelings, you feel like, oh, I thought I had some victory here. Right. And I think as someone that's been like myself, that's been through the compassion method for a long time, sometimes I think, well, I should have, we've talked about this before, but like, I feel like I should be past this now. And this person that's a counselor that's in her yoga class, that person said, think of it like this, that you're revisiting an old feeling, but with a new skill.
That's a really great way to say it.
These feelings we've had that have been with us for as long as we can remember. And we've had these systems and ways of taking care of it that a lot of them are not horribly productive. But now we have new skills. And this is what we're learning. Everybody listening to this podcast, that's whether you're listening for the first time today or you've been a listener for a while, every time you listen, you're learning new skills. You're learning new ways to approach things, new ways ultimately to take care of your heart, to take care of yourself.
That makes so much sense, because if you think about it, we've been triggering our whole entire lives. We just weren't aware that we were triggering until some point in our life. We became aware of it. And then we became aware of tools or resources that can help us with that. But we've been feeling these feelings the whole time. That's not new. But how we are approaching it and how we're seeing it and what we're doing with it, that's what's new.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, most of us are very unaware unless our trigger rises to a state where like the police have to be called or we got to get
exactly. Where it becomes so uncomfortable or unbearable, we won't face it.
Right.
And it's connected with what we're talking about in this podcast. We won't stop and face it. It's nothing new. It's been with us forever, but we won't stop and face it because we don't want to feel that boredom, that emptiness, that void. And so a big part of why we do stay in that perpetual place, whether it's social media, email, working out, your career, whatever it might be, we stay in that constant engagement because we don't want to face what we felt before because we didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Boredom is so uncomfortable.
Yes, it is so uncomfortable. Boredom mimics disconnection, specifically in early childhood development. One of the things I talk about with boredom is actually a need for connection with self or connection with others.
Right.
So boredom we think is to do more. If we do more, we won't be bored. But we actually have to be more connected to ourselves and others for boredom to feel peaceful, to feel content.
Well, but here's the other side of this. This gets kind of deep, maybe a little heady.
Yeah, no, I like it.
But perhaps boredom is never supposed to exist.
That's true, because if you were fully connected, you
with
wouldn't be bored.
yourself, you're always with yourself.
If you had that connection, especially early childhood development and then connection with ourselves, you wouldn't be bored. And that's actually true, because I used to be so bored that it was like a common feeling that I felt. I can look back through my childhood and see boredom. Yep, all along the way. And I like to have fun, and I like adventure, and I like those things. And so when nothing was going on, I can specifically remember feeling that as a common thread throughout my whole life. But now as an adult, I'm way more content on my own. I know that I'm not going to miss out. I'm going to be okay. And I can actually enjoy just myself. I just went and did a weekend or day and a half by myself, and I loved it. I wasn't bored.
Right.
Because I'm more full now, because I know I'm more connected to myself. My needs are met. I'm more, aware of myself. It doesn't feel boring anymore. It actually feels very satisfying and content.
Right.
So that's really cool. I like that.
That's really good. And I think in that episode where they were getting really deep into the science, that podcast I was mentioning, the Huberman one, they did talk about how boredom was, if you think about it, boredom is not really supposed to be somewhere where you live, because, to some degree we need to stay productive to survive.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like
growing and producing is important.
Producing, is important. But I think that what we're talking about is that if we were really comfortable being at home with ourselves, like boredom's not really going to exist.
No, I can totally see that in my life. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and I always get a kick out of how you have these, going away, and part of your homework that you had given yourself once was to go away on a camping trip. You would try to do this once a year just by yourself and face torture. That and face yourself.
Yeah. Boring would be the biggest thing. Yeah.
But forcing yourself to be with yourself.
Yep.
A little bit, 100% pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
And it was very uncomfortable.
Whereas sometimes I feel like I might enjoy something like that too much.
That's probably true.
Because my trigger is a little different. And where my pain is because growing up, not feeling like I'm enough, being around people is exhausting, because you're constantly trying to show it. Compensate for your feelings of not being enough, say the right things, do the right things, and just not being around people can be I can relax, So I'm almost the opposite, where I've got to force myself into the chaos, the chaotic environments.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Because you're a little bit more introverted. I'm a little bit more extroverted, whatever name you want to put on it. And I can see how I got a lot of my needs met from being around other people. So I did not want to be by myself. And you got more needs met being by yourself than being with other people. And so it's safer to you to be by yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody to pick on you. No bullies, Yeah. Which is also why I've always enjoyed when I like being by myself, I like the outdoors. Love it. Yeah. Snowshoeing, hikes, all those things. And sometimes they're like, well, you want to have so-and-so go with you? I'm like, no, no, I really kind of like to go by myself, So I really enjoy those things, but I also enjoy big cities. Even though there's a lot of people around, it's so easy to be anonymous. You're going to go to really cool places.
Be in it, but nothing's required of you, and you don't have to participate. You just get to be.
And you are not going to bump into people you know.
Nope, exactly.
In a big city, you're the odds of you bumping into somebody you know is so much less, and you can just be anonymous, which is why some of the loneliest people in the world live in the big cities.
Exactly. Because you can be around people, but not be with people.
Yeah. But the key to both of ours issues is yours is how do you be with yourself when there aren't people around?
Yeah.
Mine is, how do I be with myself when there are people around?
Yes, exactly. That's so good.
Because you told me once, I remember I have this in my notes too, you said, you can be your own best friend at the party.
Yep.
And I remember that one time I went to I can't remember if it was I think it was a birthday party for one of my wife's friends. And It was at a bar. There was a lot of people drinking. They had the benefit of having something to take the edge off, and then fuddy-duddy me had to quit drinking, so I don't get to enjoy that edge taking off thing. So, and I remember thinking to myself while I was there, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to impress them. I can just be with me.
Yeah.
And I might not be as gregarious and outgoing as all of these people that especially have this benefit of, having a six pack in them, but I can still be with me. And I remember that being very freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the solution is the same.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. The solution is the same. But as with many things in science, as with pretty much all things, like the Bible was ahead of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a verse that's always impressed upon me that's very related to what we're talking about here, which is Psalm 46:10.
Yeah.
It says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." If we can't be still,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lack of knowing.
Yeah.
There's a lack of
experiencing. Connection. Yeah, because knowing is experiencing. If you can't be still, you can't experience.
Yes, right. So all this stuff about giving your hippocampus a break and all these things, that we figured out, and we found this part of our brain. We decided to name the hippocampus.
Yeah.
The Bible was, centuries ahead of telling us, you need these things. Mm-hmm. You need this time. And, I think early in my Christian life, I would be like, okay, how do I force myself to do this? And I'm realizing I cannot force myself to do anything.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, ultimately. Like we can for a little while. Yeah. It works. It works for a little while.
But forcing yourself is like trying to do something for somebody else. It's like, you want somebody else, like your spouse, to be okay, to be fixed, to be changed. That's kind of the same thing that we do towards ourselves in that same way, where we're trying to force ourselves without actually connecting to ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
I know it's interesting how you can't even force yourself at the end of the day.
So I did a little word study in that verse. And so I think like when I hear the word be still, the first thing I think about is physical quietness. But if you kind of do a word study here and look at more of what the Hebrew means, it's a little bit more than that. So I was just going to share that because I thought it was very interesting. So the phrase be still from the Hebrew Rapha. So the phrase be still from the Hebrew Rapha, meaning to sink down, relax, let go, cease striving, or even have leisure. Or even just go have fun. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't have thought of that in the be still part. You know what I'm saying?
Be still sounds boring and no fun.
Yeah, it doesn't. But fun? You can have leisure? So it goes on to say it's not just about physical quietness. In the context of Psalm 46, a psalm written amid chaos, war threats, and upheaval, it's a divine command to stop fighting, striving, or controlling in our own strength, and instead surrender to God's sovereignty. God is speaking here, often interpreted as addressing both his people and their enemies, urging them to cease their frantic efforts because he alone is God, exalted above all the turmoil. Yeah, so the stillness involves releasing the need to fix everything. Oh boy. I'm a fixer.
That stillness is looking less inviting all the time. The more we go down these descriptive words, it's getting worse. No, I'm just using.
Yeah, well, and like what you were talking about, it creates space for that experiential awareness of God's presence.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And that only comes from that stillness. Just like in the compassion method, when we pause for a minute and we pause circumstances and we go inward, that's that stillness.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I connect it back to John 8:23 through 24, which I just reread this in the Message Bible the other day, and it so hit home. The verse says, Jesus said, "You're tied down to the mundane. I'm in touch with what is beyond your horizons." This is the Message translation, which he does such a great job with this. But he says, Jesus says, "I'm in touch with what is beyond your horizons. You live in terms of what you see and touch. I'm living on other terms."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because he knew how to be still.
Yeah.
And the Bible talks about that repeatedly. He went off by himself. He went off. Mm-hmm. He was able to talk about a lot of chaos going on around him.
Yeah. He was able to connect with himself in that stillness, which is so valuable.
And that got him in touch with what, you're all tied down by the mundane. Mm-hmm. This is the human experience. Yeah. We are tied down to the mundane.
Yeah.
We don't recognize that the mundane is the matrix. For those of you familiar with the movie The Matrix, the mundane is the matrix.
It is. Yeah, exactly.
So Elon Musk always jokes about like, we live in a matrix. I'm like, yeah, we do. He's like, he theorizes like, I wonder if we live in a matrix. I'm like, yeah, yes, we do. We 1,000% do. We are tied down to the mundane. Yeah. We think this world is like the end all be all, when really it's fading and disappearing and going away. And the true reality is what Jesus is talking about here. I'm in touch with what is beyond your horizons. Mm-hmm. You live in terms of what you see and touch. I'm living on other terms. Yeah,
which is ultimately one of the core components of the compassion method, is that superpower kind of feeling of your external world. Your external world does not have to determine your inner world. That's what he's really saying. He's saying, I live beyond circumstances having more power over me. And he's inviting us into being able to say the mundane external circumstances don't have to have the same power over us if we're connected internally. We can live, and even scientifically, our brain can think and create outside of our experiences.
Yeah. Or it can mine from those experiences the truth, like with the 10 gifts.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I didn't get the gift of enough when I was a child from my parents, but where did I get it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love it. I mean, this is so good. And like you said, the superpower, and if you think about it, that superpower is available to every single one of us. Mm-hmm. I used to think flying was the best superpower.
Yeah.
I just remember I wrote about this in the book, but it's coming out, sometime this year. But I wrote about how as a little kid, I would fly around in the haymow from one stack of hay bales to another like I was Superman, because I thought flying was the greatest superpower. I don't think that anymore. I think that learning to be okay in this chaotic world where very oftentimes it's not okay all around me, that's the superpower.
I fully agree, because anything is possible. That's where faith lives. That's where, belief, hope, everything lives in that knowing that we're okay, even if our external world is not okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, what advice, Laura, would you give, for someone to getting very, very practical? The remote control exercise is it starts with the pause. Mm-hmm. But what other advice would you give to someone as they're hearing this and they're trying to okay, how do I incorporate what they're talking about in my life in a super practical way that doesn't require me to go read a book or or listen to a podcast? Like, what could I do today from this information that I could just go and implement right now?
I don't know if we've posted this before, but I know we've talked about it. But I have that 5-minute attunement exercise. I think you mentioned it in the book too. That is just such a powerful way to be able to be still and be connected. Because if we're just still, but we're not connected, the stillness is just a void. But if we're still and we're connected, then we're able to actually hear. We're able to feel. We're able to experience. And so being able to, 5-minute exercise is a minute of silence. I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but kind of the gist of it is a minute of silence, which I highly recommend doing 3 minutes of silence. 3 minutes of silence. And 1 minute feels so long when you're not used to stillness. Stillness is so loud and it feels so long to do 1 minute. But I recommend doing 2 or 3 minutes of just silence. Mm-hmm. It's what you're talking about, how our brain can even in a micro dosing be able to recharge in that 3 minutes because you're just not thinking or doing anything for 3 minutes. And then it's being connected to your body and how your body is feeling, how your mind is thinking, and how your emotions are feeling. And then I like to end it with connecting with one word that's like our true self. That kind of anchors us in and helps us come back to ourselves in the stillness. So, 1 minute to 3 minutes of quiet, connecting with how your body feels, how your mind is thinking, how your heart is feeling, and then bringing it back to a word that feels like true to who you are. And as we're connecting to ourselves in that's just 5 minutes. But if you did that 5 minutes every single day for 1 week, you would start to be able to have the practice, the training of stillness. And then from there, you could expand it. Now you could do 10 minutes every day, 15 minutes every day. And not just as a discipline, but as a rewiring of the brain.
And you might even look forward to it.
Exactly. Like at first, it'll probably feel like a little overwhelming because we're not used to it. But then as your brain starts to feel the reward and the filling up and the connection, your brain is going to start to crave it. Just like you would crave social media. You're going to crave stillness. And when I say do 5 minutes every day, I don't mean it as a discipline. I mean it as a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. The second part, the being silent, I think people can grasp that. But the second part you talked about, the connecting part to what?
Yeah.
Explain, as I'm hearing that, I kind of know now that what you're saying there is let yourself feel what there is to feel.
Yes. Without fixing it, without trying to change it. Maybe after you could go to the remote control exercise, but for that 5 minutes, all you're doing is paying attention.
Like taking an inventory.
Yeah, just like taking an inventory. You're quiet enough to pay attention. Mm-hmm. So you're just observing. A lot of people will recognize, oh, wow, I feel all this weight on my shoulders, and they haven't even been aware of it. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, once you're aware of it, without doing anything, you can feel your body go, just because you put attention on it in the stillness.
Yeah.
That's key. That's what we're talking about today is so key for the brain science and the emotional connection, connecting to yourself without doing or fixing or changing, just being aware and observing and feeling in the stillness.
Yeah. And then the true self word.
So true self word is, sometimes we can complicate that, especially as we're getting to know ourselves. We want it to be like this big word, but all it is being able to say, if there's one word that could describe how I see who I am. I've already observed how I feel. I've already sat in quiet. And then from the stillness, what's one word that feels true to who I am in this moment? And sometimes it can be repetitious. Sometimes it'll be a new word. Sometimes it'll be a word that we've always known, but we've just never articulated. But that helps us come back to our true self in that moment so that we're present. We observe. We're still. We observe. And then we're present with ourselves through that word.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the word is always an adjective?
No, and that's what I've actually elaborated on. I think it starts out that way because that's the best form that we can identify as. But our true self, when we connect to our true self, it can be an experience as well. I just think that sometimes it's easier for us to put a word on the feeling to connect with it. But if you have just the feeling, but you're not even sure exactly what that word is, That's okay too. Especially as you're getting to know yourself more, you'll be more comfortable without having to have words to describe who you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a very, very powerful launching point.
Yeah. And again, it's not 5 minutes of discipline each day. It's 5 minutes of rewiring and practicing, helping our brain.
It's 5 minutes of eating dessert.
Yes, it pretty much is. Yeah. And like you said, once initially it might be uncomfortable and awkward and weird because you haven't done it.
It's broccoli.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember sitting there going like, what is supposed to, like, it feels strange in the beginning.
Yeah.
But then
it's broccoli that's not cooked or seasoned or
yeah,
it's just,
exactly. But once you're connected, once you've had it, and you've had that taste and you're like, wow, this is actually really good. You want to keep going back to it. And just like, like a vegetable that you're like, oh, I don't ever want to do that. Once you do, you feel better too. Your health feels better. So even if it is uncomfortable, you're actually helping yourself in the process.
And you're learning how to feel what you're feeling physically and emotionally, which is really great. And it's just rewiring the brain to bring awareness, which is really no different than, very similar to what I said last night to my wife, that I feel really emotionally unstable.
Yeah.
5 years ago, or 10 years ago for sure, I would not have been able to like even recognize that I was emotionally unstable.
Yeah.
Like I knew that there was something going on. Like I'm not myself right now.
Yeah.
Like I know there's something going on. I know why it's going on. I know there's something going on.
Yeah.
So, but the reason I was able to do that is because I've practiced feeling.
Yep, exactly. And that practice helps our brain create neural pathways that we can get from A to B so much easier and quicker because we've developed, we've either had those pathways and they've become overgrown, or we were never taught and we don't even have the pathways. Either way, you are forming a pathway to awareness.
Yeah.
You're forming a pathway to self-connection. You're doing a pathway to receiving love.
Well, you know what I think?
What do you think?
I think that Andrew Huberman should have you on his podcast.
That would be amazing because I love all the science of it. I just feel like if we could just throw a couple little different ingredients in the mix and he could sleep, and that would be beautiful.
Science plus the compassion method plus the word of God. That is a winning combination right there. It is
definitely a winning combination. And they all go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, as always, Laura, thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom. And I hope everybody takes some time to practice self-attunement and follow Laura's 3 simple steps of taking a minute or 3 or more of silence, taking the time to feel what your body's feeling physically and emotionally, just taking an inventory, not to try to fix or bring in gift givers or do the remote control exercise, all these things that we've learned, right? That's not what we're doing with this exercise. We're just taking an inventory and then connecting to a word that describes you or that you feel is who you are. So like when you were doing that and I was thinking it and kind of doing it as you were going, when I asked about the adjective, is the word I felt like was father.
Yep, exactly. Like I love that it's not just like, confined, like it is father, and that is part of who you are.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you again. And thank you everyone for listening. And
thank you everyone for listening.
Enjoy your journey.
We'll see you soon.